asphalt everywhere. I could have ended up just like that broken road, with a dead end in my path. Thank the Lord that I've got more than that. In this life there's nothing certain, except the curtain that rises to the stage. Silly games of second guessing, I won't forget the lessons that I don't deserve. Because one street over there's a life I could have known, would have kept me from the one I love today. One street over there's a life I could have known. Things aren't always.
Ron Jordan with your local news from WSGI.
Oh, we're going to interrupt Ron. We're going to let him talk to you in here in just a little bit. This is 1100 WSGI. I'm U-Turn Laverne. This is One Street Over, and this is Debbie Keenan in the house. Oh, my goodness. Getting all the stuff turned on to say hello. It's a Monday morning. Oh, it's always kind of busy. You beat me here. You even got here before I did.
That's unusual.
Yeah, I know. I live dangerously close. I live like 2 miles away, and we get up really early. I mean, my husband gets up at 4. I get up just after, and I just get busy, and all of a sudden I look up and I'm like, oh, I need to go to the radio station. So anyway, I'm here, y'all. Good morning. Good Monday morning. Hope you are doing great. Hope you had a great weekend. Did you have a good weekend?
I did.
So, very good.
We had a lot of family things going on this weekend, so it was great. Birthday parties.
Fun.
Granddaughter soccer game and down in Franklin, which was fun. So,
okay.
Yeah, it was kind of family.
Okay, well, very good. Yeah, we had a baseball game. Rowan, and he got the game ball, got two hits. He's just 5, but it's so much fun to watch him.
No kidding.
And we went to the Willow Oak Gala on Saturday night, and it was fabulous. It was sold out, and it was just wonderful.
Was it?
Yeah, it's just always, it's just fun. The stuff that we do here in Springfield is just fun and cool, and, we're just a cool community. That's why everybody's moving here.
That's right.
Anyway, so we're a hot spot, but you've got this coming up. Okay, so we got to get right to it because we do have Congressman John Rose giving us a call at 7:30. So get ready for that. But this is our latest Let's Talk Trash, and it came out, I want to say, a few weeks ago.
It's the March-April issue.
Okay, yeah. So it's been out a bit because I know we talked about it.
Yep.
But if you're not, tell them what Let's Talk Trash is. But first off, in case somebody's tuning in and they don't know what this is, so explain what this is, and then we'll get on to what else is going on, because you got big stuff.
Right. Well, Let's Talk Trash is actually a program, and this is the educational components. It's Let's Talk Trash News. It's 24 pages. It's very educational, teaching children awareness about their environment, helping to teach to develop good character, good citizenship, and it's funded by the Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Van Dyke, for with the TDOT's litter education funds that they receive annually. So that's a big portion of what subsidizes this, and plus local businesses that step up, like
well, the Veterans Motorplex. I know they're big, and I know they're right back here on the back. I know they are big advertisers of this and stuff.
Yes.
And it reminds me of the Highlights magazine that I loved when I was a kid, and it's so well done. And I'm just looking at the graphics on it. You just do such a beautiful job, Deb.
Well, we have a 2-page spread, and this one was an interview with Brian Holman of Holman Jewelers.
Oh, fun!
And it's 2 pages, and it tells about a little bit about him, how he got to be where he is, and what he does, and what is a jeweler, and what are facets in a diamond. I mean, so we take.
They made these, as a matter of fact.
Yes, they do.
They're my jeweler.
Yes, they do.
So that's so cool.
Yes, but there's calendars in it. We have a lot of great sponsors.
That's cool.
And F&M Bank is a premier sponsor, along with Motorplex. And also we have the United Way. Now, Ace Timmerman. She's new to this publication.
Yes, I kind of know her.
Yes,
and she's my bud.
Yes, and they have a focus on helping kids to become aware of
Well, all the nonprofits in the community and
Yes.
all the things, as my friend Mariel Barnett is
Yes.
fun to say.
Well,
but
let's. It's a Robertson County Prevention Coalition, and that's to help children become aware of what they shouldn't be doing. But we do it in a fun, age-appropriate way. There you go. Like talking about
don't smoke.
right, but we take a turtle and we make them a little maze, and basically, why do turtles live such a long time? And we go a little bit into that. Be like a turtle, live a long, healthy life by choosing not to use tobacco.
Very
So
good.
we do it in age-appropriate ways to help them become aware. But then we also touch on all the academics, science and geography and the arts and math through stories and articles. And we have a feature in here every issue, Kids Like You. We delve into different children in different parts of the world and what their daily life is like. What do they eat for breakfast? What do they do for fun? And it's a fun article that we do every single issue so that they can learn about different children around the world, because some children may just live in Springfield and never go anywhere else. So we kind of break the walls in the classroom and help them to travel beyond in fun ways.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. That is such a great idea, because I meet people at the Benevolent Center all the time that have never left their neighborhood.
Oh,
I mean,
I've
and
met,
it's just all
many.
the time. So many. I love this publication. It is so much fun. I always give it to my grandson, and it's just a lot of fun. And if you have not checked it out, it's in the Connection it was in the Connection back.
Right. Every
a
time
while
we
back.
we print 17,000 copies just for Robertson County.
Right.
And we're in Cheatham till we do 10,000 there. We're the largest distributed paper in both counties. And it goes directly to the schools, K through 8th grade. And we drop bundles at the high schools, but we also leave them at post office.
Right.
And all the sponsor locations. And so if you haven't seen it, every time we publish, it is inserted into the Connections. So those are places you can pick one up. You might even could go to one of the schools and see if you can get your hands on one.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And so they're just
And
a
at
great
F&M Bank,
Yeah.
all the F&M Bank locations.
And they're just a great little publication. I just absolutely love it. They do such a great job with it. And I wanted us to, we always have to start with this, and I'm trying to get it to stand up. I don't think it's going
And
to.
we have a new character in there. And
I saw that. And yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because you got
Character
the Character Bear. So what's Character Bear all
Well,
about?
Character Bear is all about teaching children, showing them different ways of developing good manners and etiquette. In other words, what are manners and etiquette? And I think that's something that's lost. That was such a big deal when I was a kid growing up. We used to have Amy Vanderbilt's book that my mother would refer to all the time, how to set a table.
Oh, really?
How to present yourself at a party or at school, all these different things. So these are techniques and behaviors to develop at a young age. But here's a story in this one about Goldilocks. And what does that have to do with manners and etiquette? Well, you'd have to read it to appreciate it, because Goldilocks, sleeping in all the bears' beds and not making them and leaving them messy. And it's kind of like when you go visit a friend's house, or your family's an aunt or an uncle, and you sleep in the bed and you just get up and leave. There's a little more to that. You have a responsibility to fix what you mess. Anyway, so those are little things. Yeah,
I love it.
And then we have the DARE coordinator for the state, and she writes a little story every issue, just to make kids aware of what the DARE program is, without getting into the nitty gritty. It's developing a relationship with the kids, and that we give, her name is Casey, and they can contact her if they have any questions. She's really been very helpful.
I love it. I just love it. And it's, how long have you been doing, now you've been in Cheatham County for a while, but how long have you been you've been in Robertson just this past year, right?
Yeah, we had our first anniversary this past January.
Okay.
So
we're a year in, but how long have you been doing this publication?
2012.
It's been around a while.
Yes.
And because I was very familiar with it when you brought it on. I love it. I can't say enough about it. It's just adorable. I'm so thrilled we've got this in Robertson County. And because we do have this, that means we're also going to be having our Museum of Litter and Public auction.
See, that's the second part of the Let's
That's
Talk
right.
Trash umbrella. That we have the educational part,
Right.
which is the newspaper, and then we have a county-wide, school-wide art project. And that is where we had the high school class at Daniel Owsley's shop class at Springfield High School make wooden structures that resemble an iris, but it's plain wood. They're 5 feet tall, 3 feet wide, ate it. Then they can paint, shellac it, and make it a beautiful iris where it becomes more like a museum piece.
love it.
Yeah, and then we bring them all, in fact, on the 15th,
Keep talking.
they are all going to be brought, there's going to be 25 of them, to F&M Bank on Tom Austin Highway. We bring all the irises outside F&M Bank and line them in all the grassy area.
Right.
And Ed Cope Auction and Realty will be our official auctioneer, and he will come in and we will auction off the iris structures. And what's really cool about this, all the money, this is our way of paying it back to the school system for their engagement. We take no money. And this is how it works. We should have a lot of people there. And because I've been to the Rotary and they're committed, I'm meeting with the Kiwanis on the 19th, and I'm sure they'll be committed to bringing groups out. But when someone bids, it's a live auction. It'll be fun. And let's say, for instance, and this has occurred, one of the irises gets a bid for $1,000. Okay, let's say I bid it. At the end of the auction, I write 2 checks. I write one to the school that entered the project, and the other check, other half, will go to Springfield High School David Owsley shop class because they made the structure.
Okay.
So the shop class obviously will earn more money than each individual school, but they were the ones that had the expense, and they have expensive tools, and they need to raise money.
Sure.
Right. So the key thing about this is every single penny goes back to the school system,
Right.
one way or the other. It's also a tax deduction for the person. It's a donation back to each school for everyone that is bid. I have great hopes that we will raise, I said the other day, a minimum of $5,000. I'm hoping for a minimum of $10,000.
Oh, that'd be fabulous.
We have 25 irises, and if let's say they get 500 apiece, how much is that? I don't have a calculator, but that would hit pretty darn close, if not more. So the whole point is it's a fundraiser for the schools, and it is a way for the Let's Talk Trash program to enhance the ability in schools to either put money in their art departments. And I know JR, he's with the school system, and he handles all the fine arts for all of the schools. So that would be exciting since it is an art project.
Oh, yeah.
But it develops community awareness, not just in the schools, but in the community itself, about the litter in the community. And what we're doing is we're taking that litter and we're actually making it beautiful.
Right.
Which in fact it isn't in its original state. And the person who bids on the or wins the bid on a particular iris can either take it back to their business and display it in their lobby because it has a medallion on the bottom. It says what it is and why. Or they can donate it back to the school,
Right.
where they can display it in their own lobbies
Right.
for a continuing awareness of what litter is. And not to be overlooked. You know, years ago they had catfish out of water in Nashville.
Yeah.
And I helped them with
Yes.
their marketing. That was back in 2010, maybe.
I remember it.
Yes, yes. Well,
I
I
was
did-
still on radio then up there.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well,
Yep.
I did all their marketing materials, and that's what gave me the idea back in 2014 to start a museum of litter in
Okay.
Cheatham County at the time,
Okay.
because it was a continuing awareness. So in Nashville, they had these great big catfishes,
Uh-huh.
huge.
Or maybe still a few around.
There are some.
Yeah.
There are
yeah.
some.
I've seen them from time to time.
Right, where they would wrap them and decorate them, and then they would be a permanent sculpture outside
Right.
a particular building.
Right.
Well, that's the seed of thought that gave me the idea to do a museum of litter and make it part of the TDOT funded program that we do.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. And
Yes.
I love, too, that you use the state flower. Because
Yes.
it's the iris. If you're wondering why it's an iris, that's your state flower here in Tennessee.
It's
and
a
that's
state cultured flower. There's
Okay.
a difference.
Oh,
See-
okay. Explain that, because I thought it was just the state flower. Is it not?
Well, now the Museum of Litter has three. It's a series of three every
Okay.
other year. We don't do this every year because it would kind of fizzle out and it wouldn't be nearly
Right,
as
right.
exciting. So the first year we have the Tennessee iris, which is the cultured flower of Tennessee.
Okay.
The second Museum of Litter is the Be Passionate About Litter. And it's a combination of a bumblebee, which is a state insect, and the state's wildflower, which is the passion flower.
Okay.
So they have a culture flower and they have a wildflower.
Okay. I did not
And
know
then,
that.
yeah, and in the third series, we do the smallmouth bass, which is Tennessee's sporting fish. So we keep everything indigenous to the state and create awareness of this is a culture flower, this is the wildflower,
Okay.
this is a state insect, and this is the state fish. And so it's a series of three, but it's every other year.
Okay.
And again, because of that, we tend to raise more money so it doesn't get overwhelming every year. Besides, it's a big project
Sure.
for us to put on every single year.
Right.
So next year we won't have one, but the year after that we'll bring in the Be Passion,
Okay.
which is cute.
Well, I tell you, time must really go by fast because it
Yes.
seems like I was doing an iris one with you down in Cheatham County not that long ago.
We did, well,
know, or it's
because-
maybe,
Yeah,
but-
yes. Well, see, COVID
Yeah.
kind of really
Oh, yeah.
disrupted the schedule. And so we finished because we have a series of three, I had
Right.
already had three. Well, I brought it, so then we come back to the Tennessee iris culture.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
so it rotates.
Okay.
And we did that Museum of Litter, an auction last April, a year ago.
Okay.
So
Okay. 'Cause
now
I didn't think it was that long ago. Okay.
it was just, yeah, it was last April, not this,
Okay.
a year ago. But anyway, because we do both counties, we were going to alternate, but this next year we won't have one in either county.
Okay.
So when we get to the Be Passionate one, we're going to do it in both counties at the same time and try to have the counties compete with one another.
Oh,
Who can
that'll be
raise the most
fun.
money.
Okay, that'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll also give me a year break.
Okay. Well, you need that. I mean, that's the thing. This is a lot.
It's a
And
big project, yes,
And
yes.
I love it. But it's a lot of fun. And I've been to several of them, and
Yeah.
they're just always a lot of fun. And the kids really get into it. And I am stunned at what they come up with on these displays and how they take litter and turn it into these beautiful pieces of art.
Well,
and it's
J-
just amazing to me.
Well, JR at the schools, who's in charge of the arts, he showed me a picture on his phone. They were at one of the schools doing something about the arts, and he already saw one of them already completed, and
Oh,
he
fun.
showed it to me on the phone. And I'm not divulging what school or what it looks like, but it knocked me over.
Oh,
I
really?
thought I had seen. Now you have to remember, I've been through 4 Museum of Livers already, and every one is astounding. But I'm going to tell you, it is shocking what I saw on his phone, and I said, I think that tops anything I've seen so far.
That's fabulous.
The creativity is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not telling what that one is, but some of the past ones. What are some of the most unique things you've seen them use that was litter? Can you speak to that?
Well, you have to remember, it's litter and those items that people discard that can't be recycled.
Oh, that can't be recycled. Okay.
Well, if you think about plastic, okay. Microplastics, is a very serious thing, and it's becoming more and more prevalent in our food, and they're even finding it in the liver of human beings now. And that, well, you have to remember that we have so much plastic because it was invented how many years ago? Save money, make packaging easier. Old toys. Instead of throwing them out, they've used old toys and cut them up and made them parts of the iris. Old coffee filters. Some people went and got all kinds of plastic bags, like from Walmart and Dollar Store, and melted milk jugs.
I think I saw that. Yeah, because that was really cool. That was really cool.
In the first Museum of Litter we had, that was our best of show, and it was phenomenal. We've had taking old newspaper, shellacking them or making paper mache or broken CDs, keyboard.
I think I remember that one too.
All kinds of computer parts and pieces. The keys that come off your keyboard.
Keyboard
yes.
keys.
Yeah, keyboard
right
keys.
Here. Yeah.
Me.
Just all kinds of stuff, but it's just so fascinating and so much fun.
Cans. Juice boxes or the juice pouches because it's plastic.
Well, and it's all stuff that we'll find in the landfill, y'all.
Oh my goodness!
It's all stuff you'll find in the landfill.
I could walk down probably 1 mile and have enough to create a huge one structure. Yeah,
that's a lot of fun.
It's crazy.
Okay, so let's go over the specifics of this again.
Old tires.
Yeah. and it's amazing. You will be blown away at these beautiful works of art. And this is all happening. It's next Thursday.
Yep, 21st.
The 21st.
Starts at 4 o'clock. Yep, from 4 to about 5:15.
And that's when the actual auction will happen.
Yes. At 4 o'clock, they can come and view everything, and those who are there for bidding will have bidding cards, and so they can kind of look at it and see where they want to bid and how much they want to bid, and then we'll have the awards. So, and then we'll have the auction begin.
I will be there. I'm going to come by. I'm going to make sure and get there. I may have to take Thursday off because it's recovery court graduation that morning or at noon.
Yes.
So we've got that.
Okay.
And then I think that's Reagan Day dinner that night, if I'm not mistaken. And
the 21st?
Yeah, is it? Is it the Reagan Day dinner that night, that evening? So if you've just got a full day, I think that's that evening. I may be wrong, but that tells you I've not been paying attention.
Well, the chamber, from what I can remember, is having their morning meeting from
that same. It's going to be a busy day here, but that's just good. I mean, we've got a lot of things going on, and it's just in perfect time, really, 4 to 5.
Well,
this,
and that week is cleanup week, and it's Earth Day week, and
all right.
So it couldn't come at a better time, talking about cleaning up the community, but at least have something beautiful to look at.
Yeah, exactly. And it is the Reagan Day dinner is that evening. So
yes.
Right after you get done here, you head over to the Reagan Day dinner. There you go. So it's just all kinds of stuff. But you've got so we've got the chamber meeting that morning,
yes.
The Good Morning Robinson County.
Yes.
Then we have the recovery court graduation happening at the center. You got to be there. Then we have this at 4 to 5, and then you're going to go over to the Reagan Day dinner that evening. There you go. You got your whole day.
The whole day is
The whole
done.
day. The whole day is
Whole
planned.
done, yes.
Now, remind them again. I've got to start watching for John's call to come in. We're
That's okay.
expecting John Rose to be calling us here shortly.
okay. All right.
And but remind them again how they can vote and how the time is set up for them to vote for their favorite. Right.
Right.
Okay. So remind them how to do
well,
that.
we have a voting board that will be in the lobby of F&M Bank.
Okay.
We will also have them on Facebook, Let's Talk Trash.
Okay.
So where they can go in there and vote that way as well.
Okay.
And they vote by liking. They have to put in there which one they want. And all of them will be numbered, so they won't know what school it is.
Okay.
Okay.
So you'll just be voting for whichever one you like.
Exactly.
Okay. Good
we
deal.
will not reveal until after all the votes are in.
Okay.
Yeah, because everybody wants to vote for a particular school, which is fine. But I wanted the voting to be
Anonymous.
Yes.
Now we can start voting when though, because isn't it like a few days prior to the auction? Did you tell me?
well, all the irises will be delivered to F&M Bank on the 15th.
Okay,
by
that's
5
what I
o'clock.
thought. I knew there was
So
that's today, isn't it? Or
No,
it's-
it's
no. That's
it's
Friday. What am I saying? I'm
It's
getting
Friday.
ahead of myself.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But once
It's
they're
Friday.
in, once
Okay.
they're in, I photograph all of them and prepare
Oh, okay.
the voting images for Facebook.
Okay.
So they can vote on Facebook, or
Mm-hmm.
they can go to the bank and vote there.
Tax day. They'll be at the bank.
That's
How
right.
about that? That's
Right.
the
No,
15th.
18th.
Oh yeah, they pushed it off to. You're just straightening me out today. But I knew that they do. We do have a couple of extra days on tax day.
Yeah, well, I checked it
But-
out because I thought it was 15th too, but it's the 18th.
All right, Debbie Keenan with the Keenan Group, always wonderful, and you see her work all over town. You do. You just don't. You probably don't realize it's like, oh, Debbie did that. Debbie Bob did that. They did that. They did that.
I'm hidden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, she's all over town, all over. If you've got an election that you've got, to deal with, I've seen some of the posters that she's done for this election. Oh my goodness, one in particular, but I won't say anything about it. But is fabulous, and
They're not up yet.
they're not up yet because
Yeah.
they're not in the primary. So
That's right.
And so they'll be up, and you'll know them when you see them because they're fabulous. And anyway, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you so
Have
much
a
for
great
coming.
week.
You too. And again, anticipating John Rose giving us a call here in just a moment.
Yeah, and let's raise some money.
Absolutely. We'll keep talking about it if you want to leave all this
I
with
do.
us, and we'll remind everybody to go and make your votes at the F&M Bank starting on the 15th, and then the
But
auction.
the vote starts really on the following Monday.
Okay, because you got to get all that stuff set
right.
up.
They're lobby.
Okay.
Monday.
Okay. Well, very good.
Let's see, 15th. They start voting on the.
And there's John
All
right
right.
now. All
Let
right,
you
my
go. Bye.
friend. Love you, sister. Thank you so much. And we're going to welcome
problem.
John Rose,
John Rose.
into the show now. Hi, John. John,
Good
you with us?
morning.
Good morning. I'm just saying bye to Miss Debbie Keenan. She was on the show with us, and I know you know her because she's
Yeah.
at everything around town. So I know y'all have met many, many times. And I just have to say, before we get started, Congressman John Rose is with us on the phone. I have to just give you a shout out. You and Guy, too cute the other night. Where were you? You were going to one of the Reagan Day dinners, and he was suited up just like Dad. And just the cutest thing I have seen in a while. So did he go with you to the dinner?
He did.
Oh,
He
how
did.
fun.
Actually, the whole family. So
Okay.
I was blessed. Thank you.
Well, the picture, I thought, well, maybe he just went with Dad and Chelsea, and the baby did not get to go. And what's the baby's name? I'm blank for a second.
Sam.
But they're just the cutest. You just sweetest little family. We really appreciate you sharing them with us. But that was adorable. Him dressed up just like Dad, and but that was a lot of fun. So how are you doing? How are you doing, sir?
I am doing well, U-Turn, and thank you for having me on 1100 WSGI this morning.
Appreciate you always. And we're going to be seeing you here in town. I understand you're going to be here for the Reagan Day dinner this next
That's
next
right.
week.
Yes.
So-
Looking forward to that.
Well, and it's going to be kind of an odd little thing because you're going to be introducing Congressman Green, who will be switching over because of the redistricting, and he will, after the first of the year, he will be our representative. Of course, that's if he gets reelected, but does he have any competition, and do you? I don't think either one of you have a
Well, we both
opposition?
have competition, but hopefully it'll be something that we can make our way through.
Absolutely.
He has Odessa Kelly. You may remember
yes.
who was running against Jim Cooper.
Okay. Yes.
Who is running against him? So
okay. Well, I think that we'll be seeing him. I'm pretty confident, but but you just never know.
I think so.
But
never want to count your chickens before they hatch.
Absolutely.
But, I think he.
Yeah, I think so too. And also, as far as your race, are you opposed at all? I don't know.
I do have 3 opponents on the that are running on the Democratic side.
Okay, so they'll have a primary, and that's one thing that's new to our district, to our county here in Robertson. We do actually have a primary now. Do you not have any? You don't have any opposition in the primary? Correct?
I do not have any opposition in the Republican primary. That's right.
So, and that primary is coming up, but that's a new thing here for Robertson County, and so we're navigating those waters. But we do appreciate you coming and paying us a visit next week on Thursday night. So we want to make sure everybody comes out to the Reagan Day dinner. If you don't have your tickets, you can go to the Robertson County Republicans on their Facebook page, or just reach out to the party, and they can help you set up with tickets. And it's going to be at the center this year. So, and it's going to be a great time. So.
Good.
We want to invite everybody out to that, but we also want to remind you that Congressman John Rose is there, and he's working. Are you in Washington today? Where are you, sir?
No, I'm back home today. Actually
Okay.
headed to Cumberland County for a number of different visits up that way, and so I have a full day of visits and a town hall over in the Fairfield Glade area this afternoon.
Okay, very good. And as far as the things that are going on right now, there's just so many things we could talk about. I appreciate so much your office sending us just some of the things that are on your mind. And I think about the Supreme Court nominee, that has been confirmed now, right? Where are we on the Supreme Court?
That's right. Yes, yeah. She was confirmed by the Senate last week, and very unfortunate in my view.
Yeah.
I think she will be an activist,
very much
judge. All of her rulings that we can look at would point to, and her answer even to the questions, and the questions she refused to answer, like not being able to explain the difference between a man and a woman.
It's incredible, and this is the reason why we have to pay attention to this stuff. I have been guilty of kind of checking out of the political world, and if we completely check out, if we don't stay attuned to what's going on and the things that we can affect, these are the kinds of things that happen, and it takes us in our country in a direction that we don't want to go. We're seeing the effects of that right now. Now, as we're in the election year, and we're anticipating what's going on in the primaries, what's going on across the country, and what's going on in the general. How confident are you that you guys can retake the House in the fall?
Well, if the election was held today, I think there would be little question that we would be successful. But obviously it's several months off yet, so we've got 5-6 months here before we get to that day, and so there's a lot of time. A lot of things can change. Anyone who follows politics will tell you that's a long time, an eternity, some people would say. So there's a lot that can happen, and we have to be vigilant. We have to work hard as Republicans. We have to turn out, and we have to convince our neighbors to turn out. And I thankfully, I think people have recognized that President Biden, is not what he represented himself to be. Obviously, he ran as claiming he would be a moderate, that he would bring the country together, that he would restore confidence in our country, both at home and around the world. And in fact, he's done in 1 year, I think, about as much damage as anyone could imagine to this country. So we obviously were coming out of the COVID pandemic. At the time that he came into office, he said he was going to cancel COVID. He did anything but that. Obviously, sadly, many more Americans have died on his watch than on the previous president's watch. As you recall, President Biden told us if you had, the number that we had seen, unfortunately, pass under President Trump from COVID, that you ought to quit. and I haven't seen him turn in his resignation papers, but it's been many times, or it's been worse under his watch. So, then we also have all witnessed firsthand the number of crises that this president has created, and I would just start with the border crisis, because I think it's very clear to everyone that he caused this to happen. If he had just left President Biden's if President Biden had just left President Trump's policies in place, we would not have seen a record 2 million encounters at the southern border in his first year in office, which is just sets a record and creates a continuing tragedy for this country, certainly for the people coming across the border who've been taken advantage of in many cases. Many are being trafficked. Many of the young women are being trafficked for sex. But the drugs that are coming across and that are devastating our local communities all across this country. And so a crisis that, if we remember back to December of 2020, President Trump had the border largely under control. It had been a long, hard struggle by President Trump to get the border under control, but through a combination of his policies and the construction of the border wall, we were very near to having beaten this issue for the first time, really in my lifetime, in our lifetimes, U-turn. But President Biden has just, advertised that the southern border is open, and so we see what that has gotten us, and it's about to get worse with the rollback of Title 42.
Right.
I'll stop there and let you ask me some questions, because I could go on and on about the crises that he's created, but and there are so many.
Well, and when you talk about the migration, really, crisis that is coming up, and I think, and I appreciate that you use that word. And so many people, they call it illegal immigration, but it's a migration issue, and the way it's affecting our communities. That's probably, that's one thing I tell people. I said, get involved locally whenever you really want to make a difference. And this is a place where we need to be the hands and feet of Jesus, because my goodness, it has changed the way our communities look and the way they function. We need more people in schools. This is something, we need ESL teachers. We need things like that, because it is just an influx of folks coming into our communities, small town America, that are having to adjust because of this migration crisis. And I don't see it getting better anytime soon. We've got, good over 2 years with him in office. And if you take I guess I'm trying to really think about what question to ask you about this. Can you really help the situation by taking back the Congress, or can he cause it just to worsen with executive order? What do you anticipate with that? Do we anticipate getting control of the Congress and helping the situation, or what can we hope for? What can we anticipate in regards to that from our communities?
I think you're asking the right question, U-turn, because I think it points up what everyone should be prepared for. Let's imagine that we have a great election this fall, and that we win back the House and the Senate, so that Republicans control the Congress fully. I guess even that statement is not an accurate reflection, because if on November 8th we win the House and the Senate, then next January 3rd Republicans would take control of Congress, but almost certainly we won't have a veto-proof majority in either house, and in the Senate we won't have a filibuster-proof majority. So that probably means, we'll struggle still, just as we've seen with the Democrats. We'll struggle to get our most aggressive issues through the Senate, and the president will still hold a veto pen. So we won't be, in all likelihood, able to roll back the president's progressive agenda that he's already managed to get in place. What we will be able to do is we'll be able to stop new policies that could pass through the Congress. We'll be able to conduct appropriate oversight. So we'll be able to compel the various departments to turn over accurate information, which we can't do right now. And I would point out the Democratic majority has not held a first hearing about what's happening at the southern border. And so our president is basically abdicating his sworn responsibility to uphold the Constitution, to uphold the laws of this country, and that's part of what's causing the migration across the southern border. We'll be able to hold, those departments accountable, including the secretaries, and bring them into Congress and expose what's really happening. But what we won't be able to do is pass laws. In all likelihood, we can pass them, but they probably won't make it across the president's desk. And so that means we'll have to just be setting the stage for hopefully winning back the presidency in 2024 if we want to reclaim this country fully, if we want to undo the bad policies of the Biden administration. So I think you're right to be asking that question and to be skeptical. We have a chance right now, however, I would point out, I hope, to turn back the president's misguided ending of the Title 42 policy, which will just open a flood of new people across the southern border. Over half of the people coming to the southern border are being turned back under Title 42, which is the policies that one of the policies that the Trump administration put in place to try to stem the tide of COVID and people coming into the country who were not vaccinated or who might be carrying COVID. And so, interestingly, this president is going to undo Title 42. He's already announced that. It'll happen in May, but is at the same time extending the period when those people with student loans don't have to make payments because of Title 42. And it really, there are inconsistencies in his policies that have led to this crisis. But the big thing at the southern border is just that the president has advertised in his rhetoric and the things that he's said over the last 2 years and as a candidate that the southern border would be open. And so, we've seen even Ukrainians in fact, the president encouraged Ukrainians to come to our southern border and come into the country. And so it's just really indefensible what he's done on that front.
Well, and from the Ukraine perspective, I've got good friends over there. And so, that's more of a refugee status. And in my opinion, and it's something completely different, would it not be? For the folks of Ukraine to come in, it would be refugee and not just a migration. So there seems to be a big difference there.
You're exactly right, but I think it just underscores how this president views the southern border as being just wide open. Because
he was like, go south and come up. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get you. Go ahead. No, we've made it clear that we would accept refugees from Ukraine, and I think most Americans would agree that that's a humanitarian thing that we ought to do. What we shouldn't do is tell them, just evade completely our whole system of entering this country by coming to our southern border and just walking across the border. I just talked with a gentleman from Canada who's trying to immigrate to the United States, who's been in line now for 2 years. This was on Thursday night at the Wilson County Trump dinner, and this gentleman has just received notice, and we're working with him, trying to help him, but he had just gotten notice to say that his papers would be delayed indefinitely. And all of this is happening. Here's someone who's waiting in line, legally trying to come to this country, and our system seems to be unable to process. It's because we've diverted resources to deal with the torrent of people that are coming across the southern border illegally, who haven't waited in line, who are effectively cutting line. And they're doing so because this president has encouraged them to do so. Yeah, it is very frustrating because I have a lot of immigrant friends that have done it the right way. I have had friends that are having a hard time immigrating. I had a friend from Ireland. He finally married an American citizen, but and not just to him. He fell in love and had a bride here. So but that have had just terrible time navigating the waters of immigration. I tell you, John, I failed to do my break as we were transitioning from Debbie's interview into yours, and so I do need to pause and just take a break real quickly. And when we come back, I really want to talk to you about the releasing the gas prices, the oil reserve being released, and the impact that we're going to have on that. Would that be okay? Can we pause for a moment?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
absolutely. Thank you, John. We're talking with Congressman John Rose, and he is visiting with us via phone as he does every month, and we appreciate it so much. But we do need to pause for a moment and talk about Barry and Rebecca Richards with the Exit Realty Garden Gate team. My friends, good friends that sponsor this program that I met at the Kilgore Station Bluegrass Festival. They're awesome folks, and they are here to help you in the real estate market, whether it be buying or selling, whatever it is you need to do. They are here to help you out and make sure that you are properly represented. They have come to the table with Barry, who is a marketer who has been in this business a long time. He went from marketing to real estate a few years ago, but he was a vice president of a marketing company. It's so important to have a marketer on your team because that way, when your property is for sale, we make sure everybody knows it's for sale and you're going to get the best price for your property. Now, Rebecca, one of the first in the area to be a senior real estate specialist, she understands how to cross every T and dot every I, and she'll take care of you as well and make sure that you're properly represented. Also, no matter what side of the table you're on. They specialize in Robertson County properties. You can see that at buy.robertsoncounty.com, but they also buy and sell in the surrounding counties and across the state line at Bean, Kentucky. You can find out more from them by going to sellwithbecky.com, sellwithbecky.com, or buy.robertsoncounty.com, and always tell them U-Turn sent you and right back to it. Congressman John Rose is joining us, our representative in the House of Representatives, People's House, doing a great job. Him and Guy up there, Guy's there he's all suited up, ready to go. If you've missed that, go to their Facebook page and check out that picture of him suited up just like his dad. That was just a lot of fun. But we want to get right back to the show and talk about the situation with gas prices. I commute to Nashville. The gas prices are killing me, John. I mean, just ridiculous. And I can't imagine somebody that has to commute further than I do. And I can't imagine if I had little kids and all the things that you're having to set aside because of the gas prices and what they're doing. And then, of course, the release of the strategic reserves. And the only reason he has the reserves is because President Trump put those aside. So what can you speak to that? And how do you think that's all going to shake out?
Well, I think everyone knows the president's trying to blame the high gas prices and the shortage of gasoline that is, or the limited supply that's leading to that spike up in prices. He's trying to blame that on the Ukraine. But we all know that on day one, this president, and as a candidate before that, but on day one, he shut down the XL pipeline, and he began then a series of policy implementations that have essentially stopped the new exploration for oil and gas in this country. Now, he tries to throw the rocks back at the oil industry for this, but the evidence is clear that his administration is actively deterring production of American oil and gas resources. And so we had already seen the price spiking up over the last year during his first year in office. And then, of course, the Ukrainian crisis comes along and affects the production and supply of Russian oil to the world, and that has made the situation worse. And so it's really disingenuous for the president now to blame that on the Ukrainian situation, which I would argue is of his own making as well. So we have high gasoline prices, and as you've felt yourself, and is true for all of us, it hits every American in the pocketbook, and of course anybody living on a fixed income. It hits them the worst because they're least able to adapt to this. And it has added tremendously to this inflationary spiral. This week we're going to see inflation numbers for March come out, and my guess is they're going to break records. We already in February saw the highest inflation since I was a junior in high school, 1982. We sadly, I think we may break that record this month for March when those numbers come out. And so we all know what we learned the last time, and you and I both, unfortunately, are old enough to have remember fully the last inflationary spike in this country that was in the 70s and into the 80s and really into the early 90s before we got it fully under control. And it's a tax on the working men and women of this country in a very real way. And so that's why we've seen real incomes for Americans decline over the last year during the president's first year in office. So wages have gone up. That's a good thing. But when the prices that we pay for everything go up faster, then that's a problem. And I might point out that if you look at the inflation numbers that we have seen late last year and into early this year as they've really begun to spike up. The current way that the CPI, Consumer Price Index, is calculated is different, from the way it was calculated when we were in high school back in the 70s and 80s. And so if you use the same calculation metric that they did then, the inflation that we're seeing right now is actually higher than it was in the 70s and 80s. And so we have a real problem with inflation. The president's trying to blame that on other factors, but I will tell you it's his policies, it's the trillions of dollars that he and his Democratic majority in the House and Senate pushed through on a partisan basis last year. It's the policies that have deterred American production, not only of oil and gas, but have really deterred our economy from coming back to its full strength, as he has extended benefits and other things that kept people from going back to work or discouraged them from going back to work. And so this president's really created a real economic mess. And that's why, we have, in addition to a border crisis, we have an energy crisis, we have a financial crisis in this country, and we've just got to see these policies turned around.
Well, and this is the thing that I have been guilty myself of just absolutely turning it off and turning away from it, because I've mentioned this to you before. I had one of the preachers I followed said that if I'm able to affect it or control it, it's my responsibility. If it's not, give it to God. So I'm having to discern what's my responsibility on the ground. And here's the thing, you got to get out and vote. I mean, we do have a primary. Of course, the Congressman doesn't have a primary opponent, but when it comes to the general, you better get out there and you better vote, and you better understand the difference between conservative leadership and not. And that doesn't mean it's perfect. I'll be the first one to say that those who have led us have not always done what I've wanted them to do. You've done an outstanding job, John. I can't say enough about how well you've represented us. But you've got to discern the best options, and you've got to pay attention to this stuff, guys, and it does matter. And so I'm saying get out and vote. The primary voting starts, I think, here Wednesday. So it matters who leads us, is I guess my comment there. But and we do appreciate you very much. We're getting kind of down to the last 5 minutes. I want to give you time. Is there anything that we've not brought up, that I haven't brought up, that you just really feel that you want to make sure you share with folks of Robertson County this morning?
Yes, and thank you for that opportunity. I started out talking about the crises that this president's created, and I think right now we'd be remiss if we didn't mention more fully what has happened in Ukraine. So we have frankly a national security crisis that I believe this president created by projecting was such a botched ordeal with needless loss of American lives, and we abandoned our longstanding allies in Afghanistan. And I think the day that Biden began that horrible withdrawal from Afghanistan, or retreat from Afghanistan, is probably the day that Vladimir Putin decided that he would invade the Ukraine. I think he said, "Here's my opportunity. We have a weak president. We know," and much of the Donbas region of Ukraine. And so I think this president saw his the Russian president, Putin, saw his opportunity and decided to take it. And I fear that our other enemies around the world, the Chinese, the Taiwanese situation is very much in mind, and I think they want to take back Taiwan, and I think they may be eyeing that at this point. The North Koreans, the Iranians, and others around the world that would seek to do harm to this nation, I think they see an opportunity there. The last thing I would want to mention, and you may want to ask me questions about Ukraine, but I think we've come to the aid of Ukraine. We've all been, I think, encouraged and really inspired by the Ukrainian people and their leader and their willingness to stand up and fight for their freedom. And wow, is that not inspiring to see? And so I think we want to do everything we can to help them, short of starting another world war, frankly. And so we've been pushing this administration to do just that, and I hope that they will see this through and help the Ukrainians win back their freedom in their country. One of the other issues that's very much on my mind in the last moments that we have here is I would maybe be so bold as to call it an education crisis. And we see this playing out across the country, including here in Tennessee. But we have the radical elements of the Democratic Party that are trying to indoctrinate our kids in school and seem insistent to bringing in, topics that at ages that are inappropriate. And thankfully, we've seen Florida fighting back, and we see our Tennessee General Assembly fighting back. And we've just got to, unfortunately, fight the social wars that are out there and stop this march forward of radical ideas like critical race theory, which is essentially teaching racism as though it was a mainstream acceptable idea, the very idea that people would be judged by immutable characteristics that they can't change, like the color of their skin. I have 2 young boys, and I hope they can grow up in a world where they'll be judged on their character and their achievements and accomplishments and not on the basis of their skin. And so we have to fight back against this. It's here in our system as well, in our school systems. It's in our colleges and universities, and we all have a responsibility. So I encourage people to have their eyes open, have their ears open, be listening, be seeing what's happening, and demand accountability from our local school officials. I think most of them mean well, but this is seeped into our education structure, and we have to make sure that without turning this into some sort of, inquisition, we have to make sure that our teachers understand that we want values to be taught in the home and not at school. And while we don't want to see people discriminated against or treated badly, we shouldn't be encouraging behaviors in our schools that are not healthy for our children and certainly not healthy for society at large.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that, because there is a job fair today here in Robertson County over at the school board office from noon to 4 to hire teachers and to hire bus drivers and people who can mentor these kids, everything. And so I think it's very interesting that you mentioned that, because I appeal to those of you who want to change what's happening in our schools to be on the front line, to be watching for this stuff, because we have to have people that are paying attention to what's happening so they can sound the alarm and go, we got to stop this, right?
That's right, we do. And I sat in on a roundtable in Washington last week with former leaders from the Department of Education that were talking about the attack on Title IX. And for those who've followed school athletics for the last 40 or so years, what Title IX is. It's what gave women the opportunity to be involved fully in sports in schools all across this country. And Title IX is under attack from this administration and from their supporters. And we simply cannot allow men to compete in women's sports, even if those men are confused about whether they're men or not.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. that's a topic we could talk about for a while, because I came up during the title. I mean, I grew up in all of that. I started playing basketball when we had to use the boys' leftover uniforms. And so we didn't have opportunities to get involved in sports. And we're out of time, but my goodness, we could step off in another one right there, couldn't we, John? I guess we need to save that for next time.
We could.
But thank you so much for joining us this morning. And just again, look forward to seeing you next Thursday night here at the Reagan Day dinner. Thank you so much for making time to come down and be a part of that, and just be safe out there, and we'll be praying for you. We'll be praying for you.
Thank you, U-Turn, and thanks to WSGI, and thanks to the opportunity to represent the people of the 6th District of Tennessee.
And you're doing it well. Thank you, sir. God bless you. Have a fabulous day.
Thanks, U-Turn.
God bless. And this is 1100 WSGI. We do have a couple of breaks we need to finish up before we finish up the show officially, so I'll be back with more right after this.
Speed-related crashes, injuries, and fatalities.
We need to re-elect our judge, Judge Joel Perry, on May 3rd. He has worked to keep our community safe for the last 25 years, first as assistant district attorney, and then for the last 7 years as general sessions judge. Joel was instrumental in establishing the Recovery Court, which has given many the opportunity to turn their lives around and lead a successful drug and alcohol-free life. Joel is also fiscally responsible. So far, he has returned over $500,000 to the county from the court's budget. He adopted a docketing system that reduces the amount of time officers spend in court, saving thousands of dollars in department overtime. Joel understands that the court's job is to keep our community safe and to hold those who are found guilty accountable for their actions. At the same time, he recognizes that the court can help redirect an individual's path in life, thus strengthening families and making Robertson County a better place to live, to work, and to raise a family. Join me in re-electing joelforjudge.com, paid for by Joel for Judge, Irvin Brown, Treasurer. And we want to talk about Corbin Creek Greenhouse Gifts and Gardening Center as well before we wrap up the show. Officially, they're open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5, Sunday from 1 to 5. Big news is they're open 7 days a week again because they are enjoying. And if you want to get your garden ready, now is the time to go by and talk to Miss Amy about everything you need. What kind of perennial, what kind of annual. Here's the perennials are the ones that come back. Annuals are the ones that they're just good for the season. Lavender, that's something I didn't realize lavender was a perennial. I didn't realize it came back every year. And at first I thought I would have to plant it and then plant it again because some of my herbs I do and some I don't. And I've learned a lot about it over the last couple of years because she has helped me. And I am loving my lavender that's coming up everywhere. And I've got a couple of new varieties that she's hooked me up with this year. And so I'm very excited about that. But she can educate you. If you maybe grew up with this stuff and you've forgotten all about it, well, she can school you and get you back on track with everything you need to know for your yard and garden. And they are your Robertson County CBD source. If you want Robertson County grown CBD, processed from the plants that her brother Bill grows, and the salve, she and Miss Jane make that right there in the house. It's fabulous stuff. It's good for bug bites, good for aches and pains, good for helping you sleep, and it's very good for inflammation issues like arthritis, which I deal with. It may just be a game changer for you. Why don't you go and check it out and talk to them about everything they have going on at Corbin Creek Greenhouse Gifts and Gardening Store, again, Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5, Sunday, 1 to 5. They'll be at the farmers market as well. And they are your perfect gift source too for everything you need for all the gifting occasions you have coming up, with Easter coming up, Mother's Day coming up. They're it. Go and talk to them. You're going to love them. Thank you for joining us today for One Street Over. And I'll say again, there is a job fair today for Robertson County Schools. It's from noon to 4 over at the school board building. And I forget the address on that, but you'll know where to go. Go and check it out at their website, Robertson County Schools. But again, that's the job fair today from noon to 4. Thank you for joining us. This is 1100 WSGI.